Straight out the gate, I just want to apologize in case this video comes off as like scrambly and messy and stuff, because it's more so just an amalgamation of thoughts that I've wanted to explore for some time. There's not like a definitive fucking mic drop moment that I'm gonna do at any point. It's just something that I think is quite interesting and cool. And this is my YouTube channel, so I'm gonna fucking explore it. Yeah. I think it's safe to say that there's been a divide in Star Wars for quite some time now, mostly coming to fruition with the release of the sequel trilogy. The Force Awakens was a really nice comeback, even if it was a little bit too familiar in its plot. The Last Jedi is literally high art or a war crime, depending on who you ask, and The Rise of Skywalker, whether you enjoy it for what it is or not, it tried to please everyone, and in doing so, obviously had the opposite effect. I don't know many people that like that movie. What I'm getting at here is that for a while now, Star Wars has been evoking reactions from fans, be that positive or negative. There's a pretty ongoing and kind of relentlessly tiring debate surrounding what is or isn't classic Star Wars. Is it faithful to the franchise if it attempts to expand core themes and subvert expectations in order to grow your characters and story, or is it betraying the core values that Star Wars has always been known for by straying too far from what we know and what we've become accustomed to and what we hold dear in our hearts? I don't have the answer, that's not what this video is, but in mid-November of 2019, for a brief but fucking more than welcome few weeks, the Star Wars fandom rejoiced in something that the two divided sides could come together and enjoy. For the first season, at least anyway. The Mandalorian, the story of Din Djarin, cold bounty hunter turned devoted father to this weird 50-year-old little Yoda bloke. So many people connected with this show, it was praised as a return to form and received as classic Star Wars, again, whatever that means. And I think the reason for its success, despite the obvious creative passion that was funneled into it, i.e. Greg Fraser, the cowboy vibes, and the whole Western theme, which all spoke to a clear vision that was obviously planned out and intended, the real genius move was to draw really distinctive parallels to the original trilogy. Star Wars has always been about the bond between a father and son, and as years went on, rightfully so geared into the relationships that could be forged between a parent or a mentor and a child, like a found family type situation. The entirety of the original trilogy is about Luke becoming the man he's destined to become, to bring balance to the Force, not by like winning in sick lightsaber battles, although they are pretty sick, I'll be honest, but by defying temptation, denying the easy route, and showing his father the way out of the darkness. Luke's character fundamentally changes the legacy of Darth Vader for the better. His impact changes the fate of a man that believed he was a lost cause, a tragic hero seduced by the dark side who gambled literally everything in his life and lost in a pretty bad way. This is pretty similar to the approach that was taken with The Mandalorian. It's just kind of not as obviously stated. Din Djarin is a Mandalorian foundling, meaning he was taken into the care of the Creed after clearly tragic events claimed the lives of his parents and probably more people too. Since he was a child, he's loyally followed the rules laid out by the Watch, the main two being to hold attachments close and to keep your face hidden from all living things. This is the way, he explains to everyone who wishes to see the man beneath the bucket. The first time we meet Din in a spectacular fucking scene that is, it's so good. His movements reflect that of a cold, calculated killer. He's stoic, he's minimal, but something about his body language just informs you that even at his most relaxed, he's probably more prepared than everyone else in that room for a fight. On a first watch, he acts pretty nobly, intervening in trouble and defending a helpless somebody that's just being harassed. But we soon come to realize that he's not really there to help. Dealing with the aggressors in this bar was simply a way of removing complications from his job, and after all that, we hear him speak his first line.
I can get you more credits.
I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold.
Oh god, it's chilling. The film language on display here paints him quite clearly as a villain. He's carrying bounties on his ship, they're frozen in carbonite, and as far as we've seen it, at least in live action, I don't know about a lot of the animated stuff, I haven't seen, there's a lot of Star Wars. I can't keep, there's too much Star Wars. But we've only seen Boba Fett and Darth Vader use this technique before, and they're both antagonists at the time of the use. The show is telling us that this is not a nice guy. He returns, he collects his payment, and immediately delivers his earnings in full to the Creed, and the religious cult vibes are really on show at this point. The way they speak to each other, it's monotone, it's stern, it's cold, it's emotionless, and it's hard to see why anyone would choose this life unless it was presented to them at probably their most emotionally vulnerable as a saving grace. The thing that Din shares with Vader is this experience of being indoctrinated into some sort of cult or way of life. Din's community was destroyed, his friends, his family, all presumed dead at the hands of battle droids, but when the Mandalorians find him, cowering in fear, Din is comforted by their loyalty and their devotion to protecting the helpless, all whilst forging a community with genuine human connection acting as a foundation. Which, as an ideology, I have to admit is the preferred option as opposed to being slaughtered at the hands hands of emotionless machines. Similarly, as a boy, Anakin was offered a way out of his current less than desirable circumstances too, that being taking his place as a Padawan in the Jedi Order. And down the line, Anakin's turn to the dark side came about due to emotional turmoil once he was distressed by visions of his wife dying whilst pregnant with his child. Anakin seeks a higher power to grant him life-saving abilities, desperate not to lose his wife like he lost his mother, and Anakin is told the price that he must pay, and he chooses to pay it. To save his wife, he thinks this is the way.
Brother, this guy stinks!
In the years since their loyalty was sworn to their respective creeds, Din swearing his oath and Anakin pleading fealty to his new master and the Sith teachings, the men have become shadows of their former selves. Anakin is literally imprisoned in a suit which serves as a constant and painful reminder of the worst day of his life. And whilst Din uses his armor as a display of devotion, it's pretty hard to miss that he also uses it as a front to mask his true self. It is worth noting that the show is simply titled The Mandalorian, not, I don't know, like Din Djarin or something like that. I get they can't really market it like that, but when you look at almost every other live-action Star Wars show, you're gonna notice a bit of a pattern in their naming methods. I'm not making an empty point here. There's also something interesting to be said about how Vader is trapped in his helmet, forced to spend his life caged in order to survive, but Din Djarin willingly adheres to keeping his on. For the most part, he strictly adheres to the principle, which further adds a kind of manipulative cult-like component that needs to be explored. He's confined to the cause, but it's kind of hard to say if he'd actually make the same choices had he not grown up with literally any alternative being strictly prohibited. Din is a Mandalorian now. That's how he sees himself, as an embodiment of a set of principles, no longer capable of free thought and will as an individual. He's so far down this rabbit hole in his beliefs that it's kind of just become his all-encompassing way of life. His unwavering adherence to archaic tradition has isolated him from people both physically and emotionally. He's referred to as Mando by literally everyone. There's very, very rare instances where someone asks him for his name. All anyone sees in him, and therefore all Din sees in himself, is a suit of armor that's just lost its integrity. His entire outward demeanor, this cold metallic suit of armor, is such a good metaphor for the man that Din has become in his early stages of the first season, with the point being drummed home by the fact that his childhood flashes, his humanity and his vulnerability only really get shown to us when the armor is being melted down, when it's at its weakest and most transformable state. The armor is broken down, and we see the man beneath, the man that he truly is. He kills for money, all in the service of his brother and sisterhood, because it's the only life he's ever known, and you get the impression that he kind of hates himself for it. And I also think that that's kind of echoed in Anakin's journey. When we first meet him, he's just a sweet little boy that wants to do his best in the galaxy and help people, and he's nice, he's cute, he's small and he's nice. The routine of this way of life has soured their ethics, and now the stage is set for a tale as old as time in a galaxy far, far away, and blah 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 blah. You get it, Star Wars. So there's an obvious link between them, and it clearly goes past the simple man in helmet is sad kind of thing. These guys require some guidance to overcome the boxes that they've put themselves in, and when Star Wars is driving this point home, exploring the core concept of redemption, it really starts to evoke some nostalgic feelings for me. What's more interesting is that their redemptions don't just happen upon them, they actively seek them out, even if they're not consciously doing so. I mean, Darth Vader spends the entire trilogy basically just being like, "Hey Luke, come here, psst, Luke, hey, come here, join me, we can kill the Emperor together, Luke, come here, Luke, come on, let's kill the Emperor, be fun." He frequently leaves the door of doubt wide open when it comes to his intentions, and yeah, sure, he cuts his hand off, but it's Star Wars, that's just the way it goes sometimes. In all seriousness though, he risks his status, his position, his entire way of life just to connect with Luke and prove that he's way more than what the galaxy simply has seen him as. Anakin was tricked, he was offered an impossibility on a platter, fell for the lies and deceit, and sold his humanity both metaphorically and physically in servitude of an order that winds up just treating him no better than the slave owner he belonged to as a child. At the time of recording this video, Din Djarin's helmet comes off a total of 3 times, and each and every single one of those has been out of necessity to save his son, as I already said, the 50-year-old Yoda bloke. He needs to be healed in order to be there for his son, so he takes his helmet off. He needs to scan his face to not arouse suspicion amongst Imperial officers, so he takes his helmet off. But the final time he removes his helmet feels familiar to us. He's not in danger, there's no immediate threat that needs resolving, he simply just wishes to look upon his son with his own eyes, exactly as Anakin did. Vader's commitment to the Sith and and the Empire by extension, has never been defined by his armor. He didn't take an oath of commitment to wear anything in particular, even if the black suits him way better than this fucking terrible beige getup. God, he looks so bad in Attack of the Clones, fuck me. His helmet, his mask, was never a symbol of his commitment, but rather his imprisonment. He chooses death in the forgiving arms of his son because it's the first time in decades that he's been provided a free choice. His agency as Anakin Skywalker is restored, and he welcomes his fate, having been redeemed of the previous path that he walked. The galaxy isn't exactly throwing fucking street parties for Darth Vader, don't get me wrong, but he does shed his identity and realigns his priorities in service of his loved ones. And that's kind of as good as it gets for him because of all the genocide that he did. Where Din muddies the waters slightly is because his devotion to the Watch is still a faith that he believes in and wants to believe that he's a part of. He operates as a bounty hunter, but also as a proud Mandalorian. Where his redemption is found is in his connection with Grogu. When he defies the guild and breaks the code, he does so because he strips his principles back to the basics. He sees a child in danger and he comes to their aid, exactly as the Watch once did for him. It's also just kind of poetic justice that it happens to be a droid he gets to kill. No longer devoted to killing for money, no longer interested in being a hired gun, he begins to just basically use his skills primarily in the service of protection. He relies on Grogu to establish his connection to humanity and rebuild his integrity, using the skills that his religion have granted him to contribute towards the betterment of others rather than the opposite. And if this wasn't obvious, it's immediately telling that once Grogu goes with Luke, he reverts almost immediately, even down to relying on his previous murder catchphrases and using the Darksaber to slaughter criminals as opposed to its actual purpose, which was, leading Mandalorians, presumably being the best of them. Star Wars and the original trilogy in particular thrive off the explorations of who their characters are and who they end up becoming, and The Mandalorian encompasses those themes at its, central core. And this video was recorded before Season 3 wraps up, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Din Djarin is going to shoot Baby Yoda in the fucking head or something. I don't know where their story is going, but it does feel more in line with a father stepping up in light of his prior actions to redeem himself as best as he can. Thank you for watching this. If you've enjoyed this, I'm going to be talking at length about The Mandalorian Season 3 on my podcast, Another Happy Pod. Go check it out. It's a good time. See you later.